I cannot believe that some can get the point so wrong and then be mad at Rudy, to the point of wishing him death or something. Oi. This is truly genius.
Hi guys, I'm your resident Russian otaku Danon, and this is my boy Rudy, who did nothing wrong. In fact, he's doing great so far. Let me tell you why. In the last few years, I lost all interest in anime and manga. For each good show, there were a dozen more lazy cash grabs and unimaginative isekais. But this year we've had a constant stream of good shows. However, among them there was one that reminded me why I fell in love with anime in the first place, and made me a believer once again. This show was Mushoku Tensei. Jobless Reincarnation is breathtaking. So much so that it single-handedly rekindled my love and passion for anime and made me purchase all of the translated light novels. Not pirates in this one, eh? Nicknamed the grandfather of Isekai, this show uses tropes and conventions of the genre it established beyond what we've seen thus far. We follow the journey of Rudy's Grey Rat, a son of a small-town knight Paul and his wife Zenith. However, there's more to Rudy than meets the eye. He's a reincarnate from modern-day Japan. Sounds familiar, right? From the very first episode, it is pretty much expected from the show to go the usual isekai route. Get hit by the raccoon, reincarnate in the magical fantasy world, get overpowered, and go on a quest to catch all the prettiest girls in the area. As for Rudy's, right away he is established as more than a flawed character. He has this perverted spark in his eyes, and in the beginning of his new life, he's presented as the poster child for the ugly bastard trope, in a body of a 5-year-old. Shota and NTR in one go, huh? Japan, you never cease to amaze me. But with the release of the second episode, something becomes very clear. Rudy has a deep psychological trauma from his past life, and the reason he behaves the way he does is more complicated than we first thought. From this point onward, the series transforms into something more than your typical isekai. It presents a curious case study on how a person can change their ways and become a better version of themselves with the help of others and through their own determination to live life to the fullest. In this first season of Mushoku Tensei, we've already seen the development of Rudy's character beyond what was expected of him. Yes, he's still far from perfect, but there's a huge gap between how we saw him in episode 8 and now, at the end of the second core. He has matured, learned to value his new family and friends, and his perverted antics are few and far between now. This is the first major characteristic that distinguishes Mushoku Tensei from its counterparts. Rudius is just a human, and he acts like one. When was the last time you've met a horny dropout who magically transformed into the equivalent of Jesus Christ himself after gaining some power and good looks? This is not how most people work, and Rudius shows us how much work and determination a person needs to change their ways. And let me go a little off script here. I've seen some people's reaction to episode 22, and I cannot believe that some can get the point so wrong and then be mad at Rudy, to the point of wishing him death or something. You all have a problem and fail to recognize character growth when you see one, as well as to understand the whole context of the situation. I understand some people dropping the series at episode 8 to some extent, but at this point you are either oblivious to what is exactly happening, or you're just trying to virtue signal for no fucking reason. And for all of you who are just planning to watch this series, I have one piece of advice. This is a long and nuanced story, and you really need to see some things through to get enough context. Nothing in this show happens just for the sake of happening. There is a reason for everything, and when everything unravels, then you'll be able to see why some things were necessary to be shown or not to be shown. Alright, back to the topic at hand. But no matter how captivating Rudius' quest for redemption is, the series wouldn't have achieved much if not for the amazing world building and storytelling. This is where things get interesting. It seems that the author of the original light novels, Rifujin no Maganote Sensei, took a few pages from Tolkien's book. A quick history lesson. John Ronald Reuel Tolkien is considered to be one of the first authors who invented and then used the concept of world building in their works. In other words, he decided to fill his fictional world of Middle-earth with as many details as possible. To first, make the world more believable, and second, to make it easier for him to write the story itself. By creating all these factions, regions, and cultures with their own sets of rules, cultural norms, and even languages, as well as explaining the relationship between these factions, this story basically wrote itself while Tolkien was navigating Frodo and the gang towards their goal. Today, this method is used everywhere and by everyone. However, as usual, the devil is in the details. And this Mushoku Tensei has a buttload of. Each race Rudy encounters on his journey has its distinctive language, every landmark has its own ancient history, and the magic system is intricate yet easy enough to understand given enough context. And here's the kicker. We discover all these little details and pieces of context gradually, as Rudy himself learns new things about this world. Just like a child, we are first introduced to our family, our house, our hometown. We meet new people, make friends with the kids next door. We learn the basics of this world. Then, just like in real life, some shit happens and then bam! We now have to adapt to a new environment, make new connections, take responsibility, and learn to protect the ones we love and care about. As the story moves forward and Rudius grows and matures, we learn with him. This is the most organic way to introduce new concepts and sets of rules to the viewers. And Mushoku Tensei takes its time walking us through each new thing we discover, instead of just telling us about everything there is to learn in the first 2 episodes. The story feels natural and conflicts do not feel forced because every time something happens, we learn all the information we need through just experiencing the story without unnecessary exposition. But if everything went smoothly and the story didn't introduce anything interesting, things would have become stale pretty quickly. This is when we are introduced to a certain storytelling device that Mushoku Tensei uses brilliantly. I'm of course talking about the turning points. To put it simply, turning points are events that drastically change the direction of the story. In the anime we've already seen the first 2, each of them being crazier than the last. I'm not gonna go into detail about these events, but boy, if you've already caught up with the light novels and the Turning Point 4, then you know exactly what's on my mind. But the great thing about Mushoku Tensei is that not only does the show use these events to spice things up, the episodes and chapters dedicated to these events are called turning points. With this simple trick, the author is able to create tension and anticipation for what's to come. Every single time you see that title, your hype level and anticipation increases dramatically. With that, you can mentally prepare yourself for the craziness that is about to happen, and at the same time, the author is able to almost seamlessly transition from one arc to another with little to no build-up. This is truly genius. And last but not least, the quality of Mushoku Tensei's presentation is just on another level. A whole new studio, Studio Bind, was created just to adapt this story, and the people who are in charge of the production are industry veterans. From how this show handles openings, animation, sound design, and music, it is obvious how passionate the creators are about their work. Each new location has its own opening song, and the openings themselves are more like introduction sequences that set the tone for each episode. And at this point, I don't think I even need to talk about animation. From the very first episodes, it's been nothing but movie quality. I mean, the animators were fighting over who gets to animate the introduction scene for the great demon emperor Kishirika Kishirisu. This is unprecedented, especially in the modern environment when every day there are new horror stories about underpaid Japanese animators. We've had a lot of great stories this year, each one being better than the last. But for me, Mushoku Tensei is the highlight of everything great about anime. This is the show that rarely misses, and the story gets even more interesting with every single episode or chapter. I still have a lot to say about this series, and light novels especially, but unfortunately I only have so much time to talk about it today. I hope that with this video I was able to convince you to give Mushoku Tensei a shot if you haven't already. And if you've been following Rudy's journey together with me this past year, I hope I was able to present this show from a new angle and illustrate why is it so great. And with every single character, landmark and event being this well crafted, I cannot wait for the studio Bind to adapt the erectile dysfunction arc. Man, you can say that only about Mushoku Tensei. The erectile dysfunction arc is great though, trust me. I cried like a bitch. Thank you guys for watching the video. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to my channel if you want to see my Russian ass talking about anime, gaming and music. I would also like to thank all of my recent subscribers, namely Blankhyo, Eccentric Fanboy, Username, Ernesto Padilla, and Scruffy Nerd Herder, as well as the ones whose names I don't know. Thank you for your support. Tune in next week to see how I became a fighting game pro, and watch my other videos if you haven't already. If you want to see me talk more about Mushoku Tensei and how it handles storytelling in the light novels, as well as more specific character studies, leave a comment and I will do another video in the coming weeks. It was Danon, take care and have a good day.